I wasn't supposed to wake up this morning. The doctor said last night could be my last. But somehow, against every prediction, my eyes opened to a world that suddenly felt both unbearably close and impossibly far. And in that first shaky breath, one thought burned hotter than fear or pain: someone out there deserved to hear the truth I'd carried, hidden like a poison, for my entire life. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, the pale light of dawn spilling through the cracked blinds. My hands trembled, not from age alone, but from the weight of decades pressing down like unseen chains. On the bedside table sat a wooden box, its surface scarred with scratches and old stains, the lock stubborn and unyielding. I hadn't opened it in years, maybe decades. Not until today. I pressed my fingers to the cold metal, feeling the grooves of time etched into its surface. Inside lay fragments of a life most would never imagine: black and white photographs curled at the edges, a scarf darkened with age and something more sinister, and a letter, its ink faded, but the urgency unmistakable. Every item whispered secrets I had buried, secrets that could have saved someone, or destroyed them. A sudden creak from the door jolted me. Someone was here. I froze. My voice, frail and cracked, caught in my throat as I whispered, I wasn't expecting anyone. The shadow on the threshold did not move immediately, only watched. And in that stillness, the room seemed to shrink, the walls leaning in as if holding their breath. Finally, I mustered the courage to speak. If you're here to leave, leave. But if you're here to listen, promise me one thing. My throat ached as the words came out, a ragged plea. If I disappear before I finish, don't trust the man in the photograph. The box called to me. I could feel it, as if the wood itself pulsed with the heartbeat of the past. My fingers traced the edge of the lid, hesitating. Then, slowly, painfully, I lifted it. Inside were the photographs, faces frozen in moments that were not mine to share, yet undeniably connected to the story I carried. The scarf, still stiff with old stains, made my stomach twist. And then, the letter, folded with meticulous care, never sent, never read, but alive with the weight of truths that could not stay buried any longer. I picked up the first photograph. The man in it looked ordinary, even kind, but there was something in his eyes, a glint of danger, a flicker of intent I had only understood much later. My hands shook. I remembered the day I had first seen him, the day everything began. I was just a child, but I saw more than any child should. I saw the choices that could ruin lives. And yet, for reasons I would understand only years later, I had stayed silent. The creak of the floorboards outside grew closer. Someone was listening. The air was heavy with expectation. And I knew, in that moment, that once I began, there would be no turning back. My voice would be the only guide through a maze of truths and lies, betrayals and shadows. So I began. I started at the beginning, with the day everything changed, the day I realized the cost of silence. Each word was a lifeline thrown across decades, each sentence a trembling bridge connecting what was hidden to what must be revealed. But then, just as the story began to take shape, fear gripped me. The photograph, the man whose eyes seemed to follow me even in memory, came alive in my mind. And I knew, even before speaking the next words, that the danger I had avoided for decades was not over. If I disappear before I finish, I repeated, my voice barely more than a whisper, don't trust the man in the photograph. The shadow at the door shifted, leaning closer, patient and silent. And in that moment, the room seemed to vanish, leaving only the box, the story, and the secret that had waited far too long to be told. I took a shaky breath, my fingers brushing over the photographs again. This was it, the first step into a past that refused to stay buried, the moment when truth and danger collided. And somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard a faint, almost imperceptible click, like the first piece of a puzzle falling into place. I was ready to speak. Ready to unearth what had been hidden. And yet, a cold shiver ran down my spine. Because deep down, I knew, once this story was told, nothing, no person, no secret, no time itself, would ever be the same again. The listener finally sinks into the chair, the wood creaking beneath them. Their eyes are wide, alert, but cautious. The weight of unspoken questions hangs between us, thick enough to choke. I push the box fully open, the lid groaning on its hinges. Dust rises, dancing in the pale morning light spilling through the blinds. Memories, long dormant, bitter and sharp, come flooding in, unstoppable, vivid, and merciless. I close my eyes, letting myself fall backward into time. I am no longer the frail figure in the bed, I am a boy again, my toes pressed into the cracked dirt of narrow streets, the air dense with smoke, dust, and hunger. Poverty is a cage you feel in your bones, I had known it intimately. My family had nothing, not even the illusion of stability or hope, and every day was a test of endurance. Every breath, every heartbeat, was a reminder that survival demanded choices most people could never imagine. And that's when I first met him. The man from the photograph. I should have turned away. I should have run screaming into the night. But there was a magnetic pull I could not resist. Charming, commanding, unpredictable, he exuded danger like perfume, and I, naive and desperate, followed. He found me when I was at the edge, when hunger and fear had hollowed out my sense of self. He smiled, and something inside me stirred, a dangerous spark of hope. "You want to escape this life?" he asked, voice smooth like silk over steel. "I can show you how." It sounded simple. Freedom always does at first. But freedom comes at a price. He offered a risky mission, a promise of protection, money, maybe even a taste of the life I had always dreamed of. I was foolish enough to believe it could be mine. But his freedom came wrapped in whispers of threat, late-night drives along empty roads where the dark held secrets I couldn't see, and a life balanced on the edge of violence. Every small victory felt like a step toward safety, but the shadows of his world never left. They lingered, patient and hungry, and soon, the price of involvement would be revealed. The first night on his mission is burned into my mind, crystal clear, yet distorted by the haze of fear and adrenaline. He gave me instructions that seemed simple enough, but each one carried hidden consequences. The first test was obedience. The second, discretion. By the third, I realized I had walked willingly into a world where a single misstep could end lives, including my own. And then came the night that changed everything. The scarf. The blood-stained scarf. I had worn it innocently, or perhaps unknowingly, as we carried out a plan that spiraled beyond our control. I remember the feel of it against my neck, the texture familiar, comforting, yet inextricably linked to the horror that followed. By dawn, there were screams that would haunt me forever, shadows that vanished into night without trace, and a betrayal that ripped the fabric of my life. I had someone I loved, someone I had promised I would protect with every fiber of my being. But the chaos of that night left no room for loyalty, no space for conscience. I abandoned them. My chest tightens even now as I recall the look on their face, a mixture of disbelief, anger, and betrayal. The mission, the choices, the violence, all demanded my flight. I ran, carrying only my guilt, my fear, and the unrelenting knowledge that he, the man from the photograph, would never let go. Time passed. I changed my name, my appearance, the cadence of my voice. I hid in plain sight, living a life that was safe only on the surface. But underneath, every shadow became a threat, every unexpected knock at a door a potential reckoning. I counted decades in cautious steps, in silent glances over shoulders, in nights spent awake listening to every creak, every whisper. And yet, even in hiding, my past seeped into the present. The artifacts in the box, the photographs, the letter, the scarf, brought it all back with a clarity that felt almost violent. I traced my fingers over the faded ink of the letter, reading lines that I had written decades ago in a moment of desperation, never sending them, never letting anyone see. Words that could have prevented tragedy now existed only as ghosts. I glance at the listener. Their eyes widen as recognition sparks, slow but undeniable. They have heard fragments of this story before, whispered in hushed tones by someone else. Pieces that made little sense now snap into place. The half-truths, the rumors, the stories told in fragments, they form a picture that is both terrifying and, somehow, heartbreakingly intimate. I sink against the wall, knees weak, letting the emotions crash over me. I've lived in fear, I confess, voice quivering. Decades of fear. Every day, every night, knowing he could come for me at any moment. The words hang in the air like a warning, a confession, a plea. The scarf lies between us, stiff, faded, a tangible symbol of that night. I brush my fingers over it instinctively, and memories surge, images of shattered plans, shouted commands, frantic runs through darkened alleys, the sound of someone crying my name and my inability to answer. Every detail slices like glass. I remember the betrayal most vividly. The one I trusted the most, the person I had sworn to protect, became collateral damage in a night I could never reclaim. I abandoned them, fleeing into darkness, not because I wanted to, but because survival demanded it. And even now, decades later, I carry the shame, the guilt, and the relentless question, could I have done something differently? The listener leans forward, eyes wide, absorbing every tremor in my voice, every subtle twitch of expression. The story, long buried, is alive again. And somewhere outside the room, I imagine shadows moving, patient and inevitable. The past has come to find me. And then, I whisper, voice barely audible, trembling, came the night I realized he had found me again. The air thickens. Silence presses against the walls. The box, the photographs, the scarf, they carry the promise of what is yet to come. And I know, in that moment, that the danger I fled decades ago is no longer a memory. It is here, breathing in the same air as me, and waiting. I catch my reflection in the dusty mirror across the room. The old face staring back is a mask of fear and exhaustion, but behind it flickers the same spark I had as a boy, the spark that led me to survive the streets, survive the man from the photograph, survive the mistakes I could never undo. That spark is the only thing that might see me through what comes next. The footsteps outside the door are faint, but deliberate. The past is not just memory anymore. It is an active, living force, moving closer with each second. I glance at the listener, their breathing shallow, their hands gripping the arms of the chair. They understand now. The story is no longer just mine to tell, it is theirs to bear witness to. I take a deep, shuddering breath. I ran, I say again, almost to myself, and he let me, for a while. But nothing can hide forever. Nothing can escape forever. The blood-stained scarf, the photographs, the letter, they are more than relics. They are the threads connecting a past that refused to die to a present that cannot ignore it. The room seems to pulse with anticipation, as if time itself is holding its breath. And then I speak the words that will set everything in motion. The night I thought I had escaped, I whisper, eyes fixed on the shadowed corner of the room, he found me. And this time, there is no running. The listener leans forward instinctively, drawn by the tension, the danger, the promise of revelation. Every nerve in my body tightens. The story is alive. The past is alive. And somewhere, in the darkness, the man from the photograph waits, patient, watching, ready to strike. This is the life I tried to run from. The choices I made. The love I abandoned. The fear I carried. And now, finally, after decades of silence, the truth is breathing in the same room as me, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. The room feels colder now, though the morning sun still filters weakly through the blinds. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the floor, pooling around the box and the blood-stained scarf. The listener leans forward, eyes wide, pulse quickening, as if trying to pierce the decades I've kept hidden. I cough, dry, rattling, a sound that reminds me that time is slipping, that every word I speak matters more than ever. I begin to speak, my voice trembling but urgent. It wasn't just fear that drove me all those years, I say. It was survival. And it began that night, the night everything ended, and began again. Rain hammered the streets when I ran, pounding my skin, soaking through my thin jacket. The air was electric, filled with the smell of wet asphalt and something darker, something metallic. I clutched the scarf tightly, its wet fibers pressing against my chest, reminding me that every step I took was shadowed by choices I could never undo. That night, he came for me. I remember hearing the first footsteps behind me, splashing through puddles, echoing off the walls of the narrow alleyways. My heart thumped so loudly I thought he must hear it too. I didn't look back, I couldn't. The fear, the adrenaline, the years of hiding and running all converged into a singular need, to survive. I had assumed he wanted revenge. That he would kill me for what I knew, for what I carried. But as the night stretched on, the truth revealed itself in the form of a terrifying, yet almost mundane, obsession. He wasn't after revenge. He was after the letter. The letter. The undelivered letter I had buried in that wooden box. The letter that contained proof, undeniable proof, of his crimes, the decisions that endangered countless lives. It could expose him, bring him down, save people I had never met but whose fates were intertwined with mine in ways I could barely comprehend at the time. I remember the weight of that realization as I ran, rain lashing against my face, heart hammering, lungs burning. Every shadow seemed alive. Every corner might hide him. Every passing figure could be the end. And yet, I couldn't let go of the letter. I couldn't. It was the key to everything, yet it carried the unbearable weight of what I had failed to do years ago, the lives I failed to protect, the promises I failed to keep. I failed to deliver it. That's the truth. I confess it now, raw and unflinching. I failed because I was young, because I was terrified, because I didn't know how to balance survival with courage. And because of that failure, I lost someone I loved more than life itself. I pause, my chest heaving. The listener's eyes glisten with unshed tears, the weight of my confession sinking in. I can see them piece it together. Recognition dawns in their gaze, a spark of understanding that makes my stomach twist. They are connected. They are the one I left behind all those years ago, the person I failed to protect, the person whose life was irreversibly altered by my absence. I never came back, I whisper, the words tasting like ash. I should have. I wanted to. But the chaos, the fear, the world I had been dragged into, it swallowed me whole. A tear escapes the listener, sliding down their cheek. Why, they ask, voice breaking, trembling with decades of pain and unanswered questions. Why didn't you come back for us? The question pierces me deeper than any thread ever could. It cuts through the years, the lies, the survival instincts that once governed every step of my life. I close my eyes, the memory of their face as I left haunting me, angry, terrified, pleading. I failed them then, and for decades, I've carried that weight like a blade pressed to my heart. The rain outside has intensified. Thunder shakes the windows, as if echoing the chaos of that night. I see it all again, the narrow alley, the slick streets, the shadows closing in. I remember thinking that if I could just survive until dawn, if I could just escape into the fog of the city, I might somehow find a way to make things right. But the night had other plans. That night, someone else died in my place. Someone who stepped into the path of danger, someone who shielded me with their own life. I never forgot it. I never will. The guilt of that sacrifice is a weight I can barely bear to speak of. The blood-stained scarf on the table trembles under my hand as I speak. It isn't just a symbol of that night, it is a relic of sacrifice, a tether to the person who paid the ultimate price for my survival. I can feel the dampness of that rain, the cold of the night, the terror of being hunted, all coalescing into a single, unbearable clarity. The listener leans closer, eyes locked on mine. They understand now, the full weight of my confession pressing down on both of us. Every hesitation, every flight, every year of silence makes sense in the context of that night. They are connected to the person I left behind, the one who sacrificed everything. Recognition and grief intertwine in their expression, and my chest tightens as the memory of their pain collides with mine. I should have delivered the letter, I confess, voice breaking, shaking with the enormity of truth. It could have saved lives. It could have exposed him. But fear and loss made me weak. Made me human in the worst way. And I failed. Outside, the storm rages on, matching the storm inside me. The shadows of that night, the footsteps chasing me, the relentless pursuit, it all comes back with an almost unbearable vividness. I see him again, the man from the photograph, towering and relentless, eyes sharp, every step deliberate, every move calculated. He wasn't hunting for revenge. He was hunting for the letter. The realization hits me then, like a cold, burning wave. He has found me again. He knows where it is. And if I don't act, countless lives I have carried in my heart for decades, are at risk. The weight of responsibility, combined with guilt, fear, and grief, threatens to crush me entirely. The listener reaches out, a trembling hand brushing mine. What happened, they whisper, the words loaded with a lifetime of longing and pain. I swallow hard, tears pricking my eyes. That night, someone died in my place. The words hang heavy in the room. Silence presses against us, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Every second that passes is a reminder of the urgency, the stakes, the danger that has never left me. Time is slipping, and I struggle to finish, to tell the story that has been buried for decades. I see the look on the listener's face, the grief, the recognition, the horror, the understanding. They know now why I ran. Why I hid. Why I carried the scarf, the letter, the photographs, and the memories like stones chained to my chest. And they understand, perhaps better than anyone, why this night, the night I recount to them now, is the one that defines everything. The rain pounds harder, relentless, as if urging me to move faster through my own memories, to speak the words that have been trapped for decades. I clutch the scarf, the proof of that night, and feel the cold weight of what I failed to do, the life that was lost, the sacrifices made in silence. And then, I see it clearly, the night wasn't just an end. It was a beginning. A beginning of reckoning, of truth, of finally confronting the consequences of a life I tried to outrun. The man from the photograph isn't just a threat. He is the embodiment of the past I cannot escape. The lives he endangered, the people he harmed, and the one I lost in my place, they all converge now, demanding resolution. I take a shaky breath, the room heavy with anticipation. That night, I repeat, voice trembling with raw emotion, someone died in my place. And I have carried that guilt, that fear, that responsibility, ever since. The listener's hand tightens on mine. Their eyes glisten with tears, but they are no longer just observing. They are part of this story, part of this reckoning, part of the truth that has waited decades to be revealed. The shadows in the room seem to shift. The storm outside reaches its crescendo, mirroring the turmoil within. I realize, fully, that telling this story is no longer just confession, it is survival, it is protection, it is finally facing the man from the photograph. And in that charged silence, I know the next steps will define everything. The night that began in fear, in blood, in betrayal, ends with revelation, with courage, and with a choice that cannot be undone. The listener leans forward, breathless, heart pounding. I glance at the clock. Time is short. Every second matters. Every word I speak could save lives, could honor the memory of the one who died, could finally confront the shadow that has haunted me for decades. And so I speak, my voice steadying with purpose. That night, someone died in my place. The words hang in the room like thunder before lightning. Outside, the storm rages on. Inside, the past and present collide, setting the stage for the final chapter, where truth, reckoning, and justice will converge, and nothing will ever be the same again. The storm outside finally begins to fade, the first hesitant rays of dawn piercing through gray clouds. The room is quiet now, heavy with tension and anticipation. The listener leans in closer, eyes wide with a mixture of fear, grief, and hope. My hands tremble, not from weakness, but from the weight of the truth that must finally be delivered. Every word from here on matters. Every confession, every revelation, is a step toward redemption, or annihilation. I glance at the photographs, the blood-stained scarf, the letter. Each piece of my past feels like a living entity, demanding recognition, justice, and closure. The man from the photograph, the shadow that has haunted my life for decades, has been out there all this time. Waiting, hunting, calculating. But the truth is no longer a secret I carry alone. It is shared. And in sharing it, I find the courage I lacked for so long. I take a deep breath. It's time, I whisper, voice steady, for the past to meet the present. The listener shifts, sensing the urgency. Their gaze darts toward the door, as if anticipating his arrival. I do the same. Outside, the city is waking, oblivious to the reckoning about to unfold within these walls. But I know he is coming. He always finds a way. And this time, there is no running. I retrieve the letter from the box, my fingers brushing over its edges as if connecting to the weight of decades past. Inside is the proof, evidence that could save countless lives, expose the crimes, and finally bring justice. And yet, the letter also carries a truth I have long feared sharing, the personal loss I endured, the sacrifice made by someone who stepped in for me, who died because of my failure. The listener reaches for my hand, their touch grounding me. Recognition and grief mix in their gaze, and I realize fully for the first time that they are the person I abandoned. The person whose life was altered forever by my absence. I should have been there, I confess, tears brimming. I should have protected you. I failed. Their voice cracks. Why, they ask, a lifetime of hurt and longing in one word. Why did you leave us? I was scared, I admit, finally unburdening myself. Scared of him. Scared for my life. But mostly, scared of failing again. That night, someone died in my place, and I carried that guilt with me every day since. Outside, the faint sound of approaching footsteps grows louder, deliberate, unstoppable. I know he has found us. He knows where the letter is. And now, all the running, all the hiding, comes to this moment. The door bursts open. The man from the photograph stands there, imposing, commanding, his eyes scanning the room with cold precision. He is exactly as I remembered, the same charm, the same danger, the same unpredictability. But this time, I am not a boy. I am not powerless. I am the culmination of decades of survival, fear, and preparation. You shouldn't have run, he says, voice calm but lethal. And you shouldn't have kept the letter. I stand, holding it up. I didn't run out of cowardice, I reply. I ran to survive. And I kept the letter because it was the only way to protect those you would harm. It contains the truth. The lives you endangered, the crimes you committed, it all ends here. His eyes flick to the letter, calculating. I can see the tension in his stance, the realization that his control is slipping. For the first time, he is uncertain. For the first time, he is exposed. The listener steps forward, confronting him. You can't hurt us anymore, they say, their voice strong, yet trembling with emotion. We know what you've done. The truth is coming out. He hesitates, his confidence wavering. And in that moment, I feel the weight of decades lift slightly. The past is no longer a prison. The truth, long suppressed, is now a weapon, not of violence, but of revelation. I hand the letter to the listener. It's yours now, I say. The proof. The evidence. Make it count. Outside, sirens wail in the distance. Someone must have called, someone alerted by the tension, the fear, the palpable sense that the reckoning was imminent. The man from the photograph's eyes narrow. He knows his time is running out. For a heartbeat, everything hangs in balance. Then, slowly, deliberately, he turns and steps back into the shadows. For now, he retreats, but the threat remains. The past, though confronted, is not entirely vanquished. But in facing it, we have reclaimed our power. The listener turns to me, tears streaming freely now. You survived, they whisper. We survived. And we finally understand. I nod, feeling a profound release. The weight of decades, fear, guilt, loss, regret, begins to lift. The room is brighter now, sunlight flooding through the blinds, carrying warmth that had been absent for far too long. We sit together in silence, the box between us, symbols of a life endured and a truth revealed. The blood-stained scarf, the photographs, the letter, all relics of a past that shaped us, yet no longer controls us. I'm sorry, I murmur, voice low but steady. For everything I couldn't fix, for everything I left behind. But the story, the truth, is finally out. And that is how we honor those we lost. The listener takes my hand. We can rebuild, they say. We can face what comes next, together. Outside, the city awakens fully, oblivious to the storm that passed through this room, to the reckoning that unfolded in silence, to the lives forever changed. But inside, there is clarity, closure, and the beginning of a new chapter. I look at the dawn breaking through the blinds, golden light spilling across the floor. The past, once a relentless shadow, is now illuminated. The night of fear and running has ended. The day of truth, healing, and possibility has begun. And for the first time in decades, I am free.